Hello, and welcome to Youth Positively Speaking. My name is Paige Ewing, and I work with Prevention Resources as the multimedia specialist for Positive Youth. Prevention Resources is a nonprofit located in New Jersey that is dedicated to promoting health and wellness of individuals, families, and community through education, collaboration, advocacy, and treatment. Today, I have with me my co-host, Erin Cohen, the project coordinator of Positive Youth.
Hello, as Paige said, I'm Erin Cohen, the Positive Youth Project Coordinator, and the Positive Youth Initiative focuses on building countywide capacity to prevent and reduce substance misuse for youth ages 9 to 20 in Hunterdon County.
So today we have a very special follow-up episode. We've never done one of these before. It's a part two to our last Stories from the Street episode called Tim's Story. If you haven't listened to it, please go back and listen to the episode. It was such an impactful episode. And so many of our listeners were like, we want to hear more. We want to learn more. And so that's why we're so fortunate today to be doing this part two with Evelyn Piazza and Lesley Gabel. Evelyn, why don't you reintroduce yourself for people who listened to last episode and introduce yourself for those who are just joining us this episode.
Okay, I'm Evelyn Piazza, and I lost my son Tim to hazing at a fraternity at Penn State in February of 2017. And since then, my husband and I, along with other parents, have become advocates for anti-hazing, speak to schools and organizations, and advocate for changing laws.
Thank you, Evelyn. We're so excited to have you back. And of course, we also have the project director of Positive Youth, Lesley Gabel, joining us again.
Thank you so much again for having me. I feel privileged to be part of this conversation. My name is Lesley Gabel. I'm the co-CEO as well of Prevention Resources. In this episode, however, I'm going to be switching my hat as a member of a family that experienced hazing over 25 years ago, as well as a mom that had young men that went through Greek life, as well as a daughter currently right now as a part of a academic fraternity. And some of the conversations I've had with them and experienced, as well as since our last episode, I've had lots of people approaching, asking questions and discussing some of their situations. So look forward to the conversation today.
Well, thank you both for joining us. We're super excited to be having this conversation about what is hazing and what can we do to make sure that there's not only changes within social organizations. This isn't just a Greek life. This is, any organization from athletics to marching band to anything, and not just college, but also high school. So we're very, very excited to have this conversation today with all of you.
And it's really interesting to add, and we should talk about how hazing has been going on as long as we have known. It can date back into the 1800s, and there has been a hazing death every year since 1959. But there seems to be a huge upswing in deaths since 2000. So it seems as though as things progress, that things are getting worse, and people want to they want to one up the last class and one up this other fraternity, and now it's being recorded and put out on onto social media. So really we need to talk about why it is getting more and more dangerous out there, because hazing has been going on for a long time, and for some people it doesn't seem like it was that big of a deal when it happened to them, maybe 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, but now it's starting to become a lot more dangerous.
Okay, can I ask, Erin, when you're talking about hazing, and I think we've learned in our last episode, Evelyn, there's different types of hazing. Maybe we could talk about what some of those different types of hazing are, because sometimes I think in our conversations we've had, some of the young adults were like, well, that's not hazing. That was just part of what we had to do. So maybe we could clarify, because I think we've all started to learn that hazing really there's many levels.
Yeah, so I think there's the 3 levels, right, Evelyn?
Well, there's, like you said, there's little h hazing, like we said before, and it can progress to stronger hazing, but there's psychological hazing and there's physical hazing. And the psychological hazing you'll see more often with sororities being mean girls. And the things that They may have a girl sit on a washing machine during the spin cycle in their underwear and circle the jiggly fat with Sharpie markers, something like that. But then you get into the physical side, and that can vary tremendously. I mean, and like we said, it starts off small, but it could be doing wall sits and push-ups and forced calisthenics. It could be forced drinking. It could be forced drug consumption. It could be sleep deprivation. It could be something as simple as being the designated driver for, you know, your group. It could be cleaning the house. It could be eating various concoctions or drinking various things that you're told to do. And of course, like we said before, the pledges or the new members, potential new members, always feel compelled to do it. So even though they're willing to do it, they're really under duress and they feel like they have to do it.
So Evelyn, it's interesting, some of the things that you brought up, and it's something that I definitely have heard of. Let's talk, if we can, about two of the areas you mentioned about like either cleaning a house or cleaning, or the designated driver in particular. As a parent, you know, I have my parent hat on now. Oh, designated driver. And even the work that we do at Prevention Resources, we would say designated driver is a good thing because they're reducing harm of other people that are drinking. So can we talk a little bit about that? You know, why is that seen as hazing in particular?
Well, because you're at their beck and call. And generally, there's a lot of sleep deprivation associated with this as well. So you're taking somebody who's already sleep deprived, who is now having to neglect their classes because at a moment's notice, they have to give up what they're doing and their studies and come running at various times, could be the middle of the night. And now you're putting somebody who might have, you know, been sleep deprived already behind the wheel of a car. And we just had an instance maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, at the College of New Jersey, where somebody who was the designated driver for his fraternity got into a horrible accident, not his fault, but that's the risk because you don't know who else is on the road as well. So you're putting people in an unnecessary risk position, and you might have put them further at that risk by having them be sleep deprived.
And Evelyn, it's so amazing that you actually bring that up because I was at Ryder when that happened, and TC&J is 10 minutes down the road from Ryder. And we had so many people we knew who were in that car. And so and that was the heartbreaking thing, was it wasn't the designated driver's fault. Somebody else was drunk on the road
Right.
and hit them. And all we could think was, they're doing the right thing. They're being safe, and here's somebody else being reckless. And you know, we all thought like this could have been any student at Ryder, and just absolutely broke our hearts that, you know, this happened. Yeah, I remember that. That was only a few years ago.
I do find that really interesting, though, what you said, Evelyn, to really differentiate between a designated driver. So, you know, when I think of a designated driver, it's okay, on Saturday night, we're all going out and, you know, Paige, you're going to be our designated driver. But what you're saying is, in the hazing sense, this is, you are at our beck and call. You do not have a choice. And if we call you, it doesn't matter if you're in class. It doesn't matter if you're sleeping, you're going to come pick us up. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I really had a hard time understanding myself. Well, how is designated driver a hazing? You know, how is that hazing? Because it seems to me that, again, like Lesley said, working in prevention, we're reducing harm, you know, they're making smart choices. But I do appreciate you really clarifying that, because that does make more sense now to us.
Mm-hmm. And it's not only us who have had questions about hazing. We actually asked a local high schooler named Luke, and he had a question because he wasn't really sure exactly what the definition of hazing is. And in high school, you know, you're not that exposed to hazing, but it does happen. So we wanted to play Luke's question, and then hopefully we could kind of talk about his question.
Hi, my name is Luke, and what is the difference between hazing and bullying?
So that was Luke's question. He wants to know what the difference between hazing and bullying is.
Okay, so one of our parents had a really good way of pointing this out. So bullying, you generally do to people you don't like. hazing,
Mm.
it's basically bullying, but you're doing it to people that you're supposed to be liking. You've asked these people to come into your organization, and now you're going to treat them like garbage to make them, go through whatever struggle and prove their loyalty and bond them together with their fellow, new members. And it's there's nothing good about hazing. It still comes down to, mental and physical abuse and creating embarrassment, harassment, or, the general uncomfortable feeling.
So I feel like hazing is so ingrained in college life. When I went to college, I played field hockey, and as a freshman, we went through a hazing process. And I was trying to, it was 25 years ago, so my memories are probably not completely accurate, but I was trying to think about what it was like. And I remember thinking it was called the freshman initiation, and we had to come, and I remember we were dressed in silly clothes, and we had to go all around town and go sing in restaurants. A lot of the things you were talking about, Evelyn, it is so ingrained. And to me at the time, it did not seem like a problem. It just kind of seemed like the norm. It was our freshman initiation night, and there was drinking. I remember going and doing, drinking with them. It didn't seem to be like what we're hearing about now with these volumes and volumes of alcohol, but there was alcohol going on. And so how do we really change that culture in college, from sports teams to Greek life to the marching band? How do we change it?
Well, first you need to have everybody educated on it. They need to recognize it for what it is. So it's not the fun stuff that you see in the movies. And like you said, you had to wear a silly outfit and sing songs and potentially drink. In high schools, a lot of times with sports teams, you'll read about it, especially with like football or something like wrestling. They're made to carry the water jugs or, clean the mats, or you'll find hazing where they throw them in the lockers, or they do unmentionable things with like broom handles, because they don't have necessarily like the hard alcohol at their disposal like you would in college situations.
Okay. I think that's probably the scariest thing, is that when people are trying to figure out what it is that they want to do, and we were talking about how it's gotten worse through the years, is that they do seem to be trying to do something bigger and better and bigger and better. And I remember in the last episode, Evelyn, you talked about Max Groover. And so I went back and I was looking at Max's story, and I could not believe his alcohol level was something like 0.495.
495.
And that just, to me, is so shocking as a mom of two high schoolers myself. 0.495. I mean, that's a lot of alcohol he had to drink.
Mm.
Yeah.
And, how do we get our kids to not do that?
Well,
Right.
even if I could ask, as a parent, we're asking, how do we not, how do we talk to our kids, in their eyes, young adults, right, about this? But let me even, if I can, before we get there, is how do we even get it to a point where they're not looking at it? Because some of the things that I during between our last episode and today, I started to talk to people who have been in fraternities and sororities and who've graduated. And I've asked them, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself in the situation? Why did you want to join? So how do we even have that perception? Because as when you're talking, maybe it is when you're talking to your kids, they look at some of that, because they don't know everything, as fun. They want to be a part of making new friends and feeling accepted. So I think it's when I say a complicated conversation, because in their eyes, they want to be a part of feeling accepted and belonging. Right. So, Erin, when we're talking about, how do we talk to, our kids about saying like no or walking away, in their mind, their perception, they're like, oh, I can't wait. That looks like fun. Right.
So how do we change that college culture to making it fun and doing fun activities to bond you and to bring you into this organization opposed to these risky things? How do we go about doing it? And I do love the education that Evelyn, you and all of these other parents are doing, because you've already educated us so much about hazing. What else can we say to them and to help them better navigate it?
Well, I think to draw a comparison, I think you really need to compare it to something like drunk driving, because drunk driving is no longer accepted. And your parents tell you, don't you dare drink and drive. And schools will tell you, and you see it on TV. And, Uber and Lyft were created to compensate for this, so to speak. And so we need hazing to be like that. You need education on all fronts. So you need to hear it from your parents. You need to hear it from high school. You need to hear it at colleges when you go to orientation. You need to hear it from whatever organization you're joining, that this will not be tolerated. And then you need to have all of these places kind of guide you what would be a good way to bond. Because for whatever reason, a lot of groups feel like you need to initiate somehow and you need to go through something to earn your way in. But like your younger brother or sister, they didn't have to earn their way into the family. They didn't have to do push-ups and drink something in order to become your little brother. So when you're joining an organization, think of fun things, think of true bonding things. We were speaking at one fraternity, and somebody spoke up and said, I was at the fraternity house, we had to sleep over, and we were woken up early in the morning, like 5 a.m., and we were lined up single file, and I thought, oh crap, what did I get myself into? And they marched us down the stairs, and we made a turn, and the brothers had gotten up and made a big breakfast. And so they sat around the table, and they had breakfast, and they talked, and they learned about each other. Another fraternity I went to, and actually it was a Beta Theta Pi fraternity, and they wanted to reassure me that they did not haze at their chapter. And what they did was each current brother would invite a new member out to lunch every week, and they would change it all up so that you were always going out with somebody new, and you would just talk. Things like forced karaoke and forced singing and costumes, things like that. You're causing embarrassment, and you don't know if something in somebody's life has put them in a bad spot where that will have repercussions. Maybe they have, issues with public speaking. Maybe that causes them extreme anxiety. So to create something by forcing somebody to do something, that's bad. But when you're doing something and you're talking and you're finding common ground and you're finding, okay, this person knows Marvel Comics, let's go see the latest Spider-Man movie together and they can explain it to me. Or this new member knows how to play a guitar and I've always wanted to learn how to play a guitar. Maybe he can teach me. So you find the common ground and you bond over that and something that's fun.
That sounds like so much
Yeah.
more fun to bond and finding those things and going out to eat one-on-one and becoming really good friends with each other that way. It does sound so much more appealing than, sitting and doing a wall sit.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how we make friends, for people who are just making friends because we saw somebody cool sitting at the lunch table and we're like, hey, you want to go see this new movie that came out? And that's how we make friends. And actually, we had somebody submit what their organization does instead of hazing as a way of bonding together the group of girls that's in this organization. So she asked to remain anonymous, but I am going to just play her audio clip so that she can tell us what her group does instead of hazing. And it kind of goes along with, what we've been talking about.
A big way that my organization bonded were through Sisterhood Events. To give some examples, we had movie and game nights.
So at her group, they would do like movie, game nights, tie-dye t-shirts, like really fun things. And I was like, that's amazing. But that's what friends do anyways.
Right.
So I think it's so crazy that it's become such a big part of, this perceived culture, I'll call it, that we have to do, like you said, Evelyn, like these really intense initiations for people to become friends, when
Right.
none of us make friends that way. If you're mean to somebody, they're going to be like, I don't want to hang out with you. But for some reason, when you're joining an organization, no matter what it is, somehow they make people say that it's acceptable and that it's almost expected. And we know that it shouldn't be expected. And I think that's a huge conversation. And the bigger picture at large is, how do we change that perception of, this is not okay and it's not a good way to bond? And even if it's happened in the past, it doesn't mean that it should happen in the future. There are so many things in our past that, went on for hundreds of years, and now we know they are bad things. So I think that we kind of have to have that same mindset of hazing, of, yes, it happened in the past, but let's not let it happen in the future.
And like you said, really, we always say it's a cycle of abuse, and the abused later becomes the abuser. So you take a different situation. Take like, you beat your child. Well, when that child grows up, that's what they know. And maybe they beat their child. Do we think that that's acceptable in today's society? No.
Right.
So why would hazing ever be considered acceptable? Because it's so many forms of abuse.
It is. And I can remember reading something else about how people were saying, hey, I was hazed. They're not getting off easy. And that, to me, it, again, like you said, if your parents, physically abused you growing up, are you going to look at your kids and think, well, I had to go through this, so this is what you're going to do? So I think that mindset needs to be changed, that just because it happened to you doesn't mean that you have to do it to somebody else.
Right. And it should have never happened to you.
So, Evelyn, one of the things I'd like to find out as you've gone across all the different college campuses is about the calling for help. We know in New Jersey, there's the 911 Lifeline legislation, which is put in place for a teen if they need help due to alcohol. They can call, as well as the person who might be in duress, that they can receive amnesty under the law. We know that we've also passed a Good Samaritan law in the state of New Jersey, that anyone can call for help, whether they're on any type of substance, and the person that needs help, as well as people who stand close by to help first responders, receive amnesty under the law. There are a lot of states that have these laws. One of the things that we were talking about as a way to help on college campuses is there any college campuses that you know of that when a student who might be, in a situation of hazing, or just in a situation that they want to call for help, but they fear ramifications of consequences the university or college might have, whether they don't want to get their fraternity, sorority, or organization in trouble? Have you heard of any school that puts harm reduction in place, that they won't receive a consequence if they call for help?
So there's many different ways to call for help. Some schools have an app. So I don't remember, whether it's the Stop It app or, something like that. You can have an app on your phone that you can anonymously report. Some schools have like an anonymous hotline. There's a fraternity and sorority hotline that is a national number that goes to a legal office. You can call the school, you can call the fraternity or sorority, and these organizations, if you're calling headquarters, they may not necessarily want to encourage hazing, because they're on the line. It's a business, so they don't want hazing to happen. They don't want something bad to happen. They don't want to have to be on the hook for that lawsuit when something bad happens. So there are ways to frame things so that they're not exposing who you are. But there are anonymous hotlines, and a lot of times, you can even talk to a parent and have them call on your behalf. And there's also, in a lot of schools, there's the blue light system. You can go and hit the blue light and the cops can show up and you can make a speedy getaway.
Evelyn, can you just talk about that for maybe parents who don't currently have anybody on a college campus about what a blue light is? I mean, I'm familiar with.
I'm glad you're asking because I don't have any kids in college at the moment and I didn't know what the blue light is.
Mm-hmm.
So on some campuses, there's what they call a blue light system. And at various locations, you will see a light with a phone. It's a blue light or whatever other color. And say it's late at night, you're coming home from the library and you don't feel comfortable, you hit the blue light and campus safety will come and take you and take you to where you need to go. But in Tim's instance, there was a blue light across the street from this house. When he fell and was incapacitated, they could have called for help, but they could have taken him outside to the blue light, hit the blue light, and watched safely from the bushes. Right. But not that I'm encouraging, abandoning somebody, but like Lesley was saying, so many schools have amnesty rule policies, and so many states have amnesty policies. And so that means, and even for hazing, some states do have hazing amnesty. So if you're the first person to call, you will get amnesty. You might still have to face some repercussions from the school, like maybe if there's alcohol involved, maybe you have to take an alcohol education class. But like we say to people, that is such a small price to pay because you will have saved a life. So, there's no downside really to calling for help.
Yeah. Go ahead, Erin.
I was just going to say, as parents and I have high schoolers right now, I always talk about making sure you're safe or other people are safe. And I think that's part of the conversation we have to have when we talk about parents need to talk to their kids. If you see a kid in distress, just like, so if half the kids, or even, I know there was the one kid that came in and saw Tim was in distress and wanted to call and people were fighting him on it. If parents talk to their kids about if they see someone in distress, just call for help, because it's, even if your friends might be mad at you, even if somebody calls you a name and you're this and you're whiny, one of the things I saw was being, people were calling people whiny when they were talking about trying to stop hazing or stopping stuff like that. But it's worth being called something like that to know that you're potentially saving someone's life.
Yeah.
But if I can just, if we can, so we're talking through the lenses of adults right now, right? As we are talking, to kids. So Evelyn, can you tell us, and even in my experiences, just so everyone knows, I've had, kids in fraternities where my own children, and speaking with them, my brother, interestingly, and all these years later, has said, I can't believe that I put my family through this. And I always go back and say, but you were 20 years old. You weren't thinking the way you are now as an adult. So can we have our conversation now, if we can shift to, I'm a 18, 19-year-old student, or maybe I'm even younger in high school. And I'm in the situation and I'm watching this happen, or it's experiencing to me. What do I do? Because we might, as we've told our kids before, if something's dangerous or something's wrong, walk away. We know even when we're telling kids about don't do drugs, right? Just say no, as we've heard that, we know that doesn't necessarily always work. So Evelyn, do you, in your experience and all the work that you've done, what can our young adults and teens do?
Well, I mean, we've taught them from an early age what's right and what's wrong, and what's being good and what's being bad. And when something's not right with somebody, you get that nagging feeling in your gut, and that something's bad. And how can you live with yourself if you don't speak up? And think about it from the perspective of, what if that person was your brother or sister? And how would you feel if nobody called for them, if nobody valued their life, if nobody got them help? And then, God forbid, if something goes wrong, and now you're the family that has lost that member, you could be the person that saves that person's life and saves a family the grief of having to go through the rest of their life without somebody being there, or with somebody being so damaged that it's, irreversible.
So what should they do? So I'm at a party and I see, shots, binge drinking, and I'm starting to see that people aren't okay. What should I do?
You can leave the room and call 911. And
Even I'm thinking like text your parents and
yeah,
kind of just tell them what's happening, because they may be able to make a better decision than you.
exactly.
I think always like the good tip is, like, you feel uncomfortable, saying like this is wrong in the moment, because maybe they're your friends, maybe you do know them, or maybe you do want to be a part of this group. Oh, be like, I have to pee, and go to the bathroom, and you can call in the bathroom. If you're at a college, just be like, oh, I need some fresh air real quick, go outside and press that blue light and go back inside. Or
Exactly.
something along those lines of just like alerting somebody. Even if you text your roommate and say, hey, bad stuff happening, this building, call for help. And,
Right.
Of course, is it not great to put it on somebody else? Yes. But, in that moment, you might feel really pressured to want to fit into, but you have that, like you said, Evelyn, that nagging feeling. And so there are always ways of just sneaking out for a hot second, texting somebody, your mom, something's
Mm-hmm.
going on, call for help. Maybe even having like a text system like SOS 911,
Right.
to a friend, and then they call you and you're like, oh, I'm getting a call, hold on. And you go and you pick it up and you're
Right.
like, hey, call public safety. Hey, call my mom. Something bad is happening.
And
I don't,
even if you have a code word, so that if somebody took your phone and grabbed it and said, who did you call or who did you text, have a code word so that the other person knows that this is a trouble situation and what they can do on their end.
so it's
And I,
almost like making it's almost like making a pact ahead of time, having a plan, even
exactly.
if I think we've talked before, Erin, about when we were talking to our kids that were in high school about, text, even saying, hey, my stomach hurts. All you have to tell someone is, oh, my stomach's feeling bad. People are like, oh, you better go, right? Because nobody wants to
Right.
about anybody with a bad stomach, right? But we say this in jest, but it is a way for you to get out of that situation of also no questions asked. I'll come pick you up whenever you need. The one thing I do want to take a moment to make sure that our listeners know here on a local level in Hunterdon County, the prosecutor's office in partnership with the schools have launched a brand new app. And we'll make sure that it comes up on our screen, and it's called Safe Schools. And this app has been put out so anybody can text information that will go into into law enforcement if if there's bullying going on, or if there's drugs being sold, or just any situation that they feel needs some assistance. And so that's an anonymous app that was just launched last month, which we're very happy that that's another tool for students in Hunterdon County to use. But there are a lot of these types of programs, and I really encourage our listeners to, wherever you are, as a parent, make sure that your young adult or teenager is equipped to know what sort of help tools are there for them. And I think we always think that it's not going to be our child or someone we know. And I think that that is something we need to make sure everyone knows. It could happen to anyone. And we always think it's not going to be us. It's a fun night. It won't be, they'll be fine. They're just going to sleep it off. And I think it's important that we also emphasize, if someone's unable to speak, if someone is vomiting, if somebody is slurring their speech, this is all part of alcohol poisoning. This is all means that something is not right with this individual. They need help. It's not for you to decide whether they'll be okay. You do not know that.
Right.
So this is any scenario where someone is in this, they need to just, when in doubt, you call.
And
And
I
I
think
think
that's why education is so important. That's kind of how we started this conversation of like, what can we do? Well, really the first step is educating everyone, whether you're a high schooler, a college student, a parent, a teacher, everyone should know the signs of alcohol poisoning. You should know the signs of hazing. And somebody actually submitted what they do, their college does, and some of the education. So I'm going to let her tell us a little bit about what her college does.
So my organization avoids hazing by having recent pledges, go through learning modules online to learn about like what hazing is, what constitutes hazing, and how to avoid it, and how to speak up if something were to happen. And as a whole, the Panhellenic organization, before you even join a sorority, they like do a presentation and they like teach you about like what hazing is and what kind of like legal action could be taken like if you're found to be like hazing someone.
I just thought it was so amazing that even within the Panhellenic Council, they are doing presentations. The university mandates that anyone joining, has to take these online learning modules. And I loved that within the learning module, it's what do you do if it is? It's not just here's hazing, it's what do you do when there is? And so I think that's a great first step. And I really hope that, more colleges make sure that anybody joining any group does some sort of education like that.
well,
I was just going to say, Paige, it reminds me a little bit about when we had our Home for the Holidays episode where two of our college students came back and were talking to us. They were freshmen in college, and they were talking about the alcohol modules that they were learning about when they first got to campus. And Paige is a recent college graduate, and she had gone through the same thing 25 years ago when I was a college freshman. That wasn't happening. So I feel like we're moving forward with the education piece. And this particular thing is the same thing where you learning about alcohol, but now you're also learning about hazing and what it is and what, the different types of it so that you can identify it and then how to react to it if it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, for most schools, we have seen on a regular basis about alcohol, sexual assault, what to do. But I don't think all schools are where we need to be with hazing, because we know, as we've had these conversations, hazing can occur in groups and sports outside of Greek life. So hazing should be a part of the standard education of any college student, and it should be every year. Just as we've had the dialogue today, Evelyn, I've learned so much. And I thought I knew a lot already from some of my own experiences, but hearing the conversation shift as well as about some of the positive things. And I really like that part of our conversation of explaining what is a positive way to bond and to work together, because that is a conversation I really haven't heard many schools teaching. And from an education standpoint, I really hope through this conversation, we could really help encourage colleges and universities to talk about positive ways to bring people together, not just the things that aren't okay, but what is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Positive aspect can be so beneficial to people in their future. I mean, if you look back on your life, are you going to fondly remember the person who hazed the crap out of you and treated you like garbage? Or are you going to look back on the person who was there for you and, said nice things about you and built you up to the point where it boosted your confidence, and now you feel better because this person helped put you in that place?
Exactly. When you're talking about building each other up, if this was a relationship with someone, if you're starting to date someone, you wouldn't say, it's okay that he treats you this way because, he just wants to know your loyalty, right? And so I think that when you build people up, you can see how they're devoted to you by being there for you when you're going through a hard time. A friend being there for you, to me, is a way of showing how they're loyal to you because they're there for you when you need it, opposed to, treating them badly.
Mm.
So an example I like to give is my older son was very involved with the Penn State Dance Marathon, and they have all these groups, and his group, as part of their team bonding experience, sat in a circle and had a ball of yarn. And they take the yarn and they throw it across to somebody, and the person who catches it, they say something nice about that person. And then that person takes the yarn and throws it to somebody. And then it becomes this interlocking web of yarn. But so many meaningful, nice things have been said. And then they take the yarn and cut it and they make it into a bracelet. And he wore his bracelets for years. And that meant so much to him, what the things that people said about him. So something like that can have such a long-lasting positive effect.
Mm-hmm. And just in our last few minutes, talking about something that has had a wonderful positive effect, even though it's come from something so negative, is the Memorial Foundation, Evelyn. And we didn't really get to talk about it that much in our last episode. So I'd really love to take these last few minutes to let you tell us a little bit more about the Timothy J. Piazza Memorial Foundation.
Sure. So we created this foundation to fund prosthetics and medical devices for kids, especially who need prosthetics or assistance with a limb. And Tim wanted to major in mechanical engineering so he could go into prosthetics. So we have no idea where this came from. We think maybe he saw some cool video online where somebody made something out of a 3D printer and he thought, hey, that's awesome, I want to do that. So we are fulfilling his life's goal. And we've raised a lot of money. We've been very fortunate. We've raised a lot of money. We've funded a lot of prosthetics. We work a lot with Shriners Hospital in Philadelphia, with a couple other places. So we will fund people who, insurance may cover a limb, but for a kid, maybe they need a blade. Maybe they need a swimmer's leg so that they can continue to be a kid. Maybe they need an arm with a bike attachment so that they can ride a bike, but insurance won't cover that. And that's where we come in and we help make that a reality.
Well, thank you.
That's beautiful.
I know. I absolutely love hopping onto your website. For anybody who hasn't gone, it's www.liveliketim.org. You can go onto their website and see their mission and all the wonderful work that they've done in memory of Tim. But I really have to say thank you so much, Evelyn, for coming on again. Thank you, Lesley, for coming on again. And thank you to our listeners for encouraging us to do this part 2. I know so many of you had so many more questions. And so I really hope that we've answered some of them. If not, you can always reach out to Erin or I, and we would love to help you. Our website is www.njprevent.org/positive youth, and our contact information is right down at the bottom. We've also added a brand new section to our website that offers lots of research and resources about each topic from all of our episodes. So we'll be adding more information about hazing, and different things along those lines on our website. But like I said, thank you so much, Evelyn, for coming on. Thank you, Lesley, for coming on. Like I said, to learn more about the Timothy J. Piazza Memorial Foundation, please visit their website at www.liveliketim.org. And for more information about hazing, please visit our website at njprevent.com/positive youth. And thank you for listening in. We'll see you next time for more Youth Positively Speaking.